So share with me what you learned.
Well, basically, what they said happened here is they were running this AI model and doing it within a contained, what they thought was a contained network.
Hmm.
Somehow, the AI model managed to break out of what they thought was the contained network, managed to get to the internet, hacked into another company's public network, and started stealing what it needed to. Basically, this thing had been tasked with taking a test, and it decided the test was too hard. So it went after the people that it thought was likely the ones who have generated the test and broke in to steal the answers to the test.
Wow.
And they discovered what was going on, tried to start stopping it, and had trouble stopping it. They ended up having to do what I hear, and I heard this with a grapevine. I don't know whether it's truly accurate or not, but was told that they had to end up using a piece of software that evidently we don't use in our country, but they got from China to shut this thing down and get control of it again. And so, just like, and I spent most of my career from 30 something on working in computer and computer systems at a very high level.
Right.
And I would never thought something like this was possible, but uh, evidently it is because I mean, this is public networks, and you can find it on CNN. Almost every Reuters, everybody out there was talking about this. Uh, I don't know how much it dates me, but are you acquainted with the film 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Yes, yes.
Okay. In that film, what the film's all about, it's about a spacecraft, Americans going on a spacecraft, I think from
Right.
Earth to Mars. And the craft is being controlled by a computer system that they called HAL. And somewhere in the process of making this journey, HAL started doing things running the ship that the occupants of the ship didn't like. And they finally got in this contest with one another, and the astronauts on board the ship were doing their best to shut down the computer system and get control of the system back. And Hal kind of went on a binge, and he decided he was going to eliminate the astronauts by killing them. And you had this battle there. And when I read this, it's like it's reminding me of Hal, which back in 2000 or when 2001, that movie I believe came out probably 1969. When
Right.
that movie came out, that was extreme sci-fiism. And now after reading this today, it's like, hey, that's pretty close to reality. What's taking place here? We're only a few steps away from it.
Well,
And
it's interesting because I've heard of AI like breaking out of its parameters, so to speak, like and going after records within its own company or own database that it was not asked to. It just went out and did it on its own. But it's interesting that it broke out of its containment, so to speak, went out to the internet and went after the things that needed to go after.
from reading what I've read thus far on this, it sounded like they were running this within a contained environment. They
Right,
didn't think it had access to the real world internet, but
right.
somehow it found a means and a way of getting to the internet. And then once it got to the internet, it was taking this test, and it said, well, if this test has been generated for me to take, I believe that this AI company over here that's doing this is probably likely involved in the generation of this test. And it was correct. And it broke into this company and was able to change, or not change, but find the questions that it was being asked and find the answers and begin answering those questions. And then, like I said, when they tried to stop it and contain it, they had trouble doing so initially.
Now, you know what? Is that not scary? Because again, at some point, we humans will not be able to ascertain the truth. Is it true or is it something generated by AI?
Well, I think we're already there as far as that goes. I've used little, I mean, what I play with is just out of AI tools you get from Microsoft, and I've asked it to draw pictures for me and do this and do that. And I'm absolutely amazed at what it will do. I look at this level and I think in terms of when I was working in my career, I thought it would be so much fun to work on a project where you were actually trying to create almost like AI intelligence and put it within a robotic entity.
Hmm.
Now, at that point in time, that was so far removed because you'd have to have a robotic entity that would be so huge to hold the computing power. Nowadays, you don't need that. You've got these data centers that have are the capability of running AI, and you have communication means that can communicate to a robot the size of what you or I are, so that now you're giving this AI software, intelligent software thing, hands and arms to be able to go and do for it, just like what you and I would do for ourselves. And what you would begin seeing there is you're seeing a contest between humans and these robots that are trying to help AI, and we're trying to stop AI. That you could really, in the real world, end up at some point having a real live how the computer type situation where it's us against the computer. Just about like the Terminator movies. You had these robotic Terminators, but far
I
fetched.
Well, not only is it far-fetched, but just think about the possibilities um, now, and not only now, but in the future, once you get all these data centers up and going and everything's linked.
Exactly, the computing power and the intelligence you've got built into there. You've got all the brightest and smartest people coming together building this AI, and they're doing it from the software point of view, but they're giving it an intelligence with the basis of the smartest doctors, the smartest engineers, the smartest military minds. That you take all of these areas of expertise and you're building an AI that is the peak of all of those expertises, and you're giving it all into one entity. Uh, it's revealing capabilities that I would have thought a number of years ago were absolutely preposterous. And what I'm reading in the headlines and seeing is making me reevaluate what I thought, to the point where this is no longer make believe, it's no longer preposterous.
No,
This is potentially highly dangerous. And then you think about taking it in. We've been talking this week about the mark of the beast and that system and how it's going to get implemented in the second half of the 7 years of Jacob's trouble that the book of Revelation talks about. And you have something like this behind the image of the beast and issuing out the mark of the beast, and making sure every individual on earth is identified. Uh, just like that facial recognition that you sent me a video earlier in the week, and I was looking at about how you can pay online and not have to use your phone anymore. You just look at a screen and it recognizes your face, and you pay for something in a matter of a second or so, or a split second.
it's and I've been saying for a couple of years the infrastructure is being built, but the infrastructure is in place in a lot of areas that we just didn't even know.
It's been in place for years. Back during the 90s, I watched as people were, these big companies were moving from, tying things together. They were buying what we called T1s, which is a humongous data stream where you could pass data back and forth. And, it's just like for example, I worked for General Motors, and they had their uh, loan companies all across the United States. And we had a sister data center. We had one in Dayton, Ohio, and we had one in Atlanta, Georgia. And those two were tied together. And, it was seamless as to whether you were in Dayton or whether you were in Atlanta. It was
Right.
like one data center, and they communicated with one another. And just even like we used to print things in Dayton that were generated in Atlanta, and they'd come across the data line so fast that our printers would print it off and then wait for more data. The speeds there, but now you got the speeds where things are coming with fiber optics. You wouldn't have that wait delay anymore. You could just keep a printer going endlessly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's getting interconnected, and that was happening. Like I said, back during the 90s, these companies were all getting interconnected with one another. And
Yes.
I was spending a lot of work in the 90s helping one company talk to its trading partners, and they were eliminating the human factors where everything was taken care of electronically.
Right, right.
You know, I work for a company, the public would recognize them as Domino Foods and Domino Sugar.
Hmm.
And when they would, if you go to Walmart and you buy a bag of sugar, when you buy that bag of sugar at the checkout line, it subtracts one off the inventory of that store in the back office. And when their pallet is showing down, getting close to empty, a certain threshold, it'll kick off an automatic order to order another pallet of sugar from the warehouse. And the
Gee.
warehouse does the same thing. And eventually, when the warehouse gets so low, it automatically generates a purchase order to go out to Domino Foods and Domino Sugar to order either another train car load or tractor trailer load of sugar to replenish the warehouse. So we've been watching for a couple of decades or more now. These companies get integrated with one another and the capabilities set up. So most of the foundation is already there. And it's just now the intelligence is being built on top of that. And where that could go is almost beyond scary.
Well, it's been said for at least a decade. Companies that have data and know how to use the data, they are the ones that are going to win the day. So think about, like Amazon or Walmart. I mean, think about the data that they collect based on the volume that they do
Oh,
and how that can help them, stock, inventory, the logistics, moving things behind the scenes. And think about companies that have large sets of data. And if they know what to do with it and organize it, they're the ones that are going to win. And man, this is just, it's the future is here now.
yeah. Well, like you're saying, having the data. It's right now, if you go out and you browse on something, if you go look up hearing aids,
Hmm.
next thing you know, you go to Facebook or anything you go, you get ads popping up all over your computer
Right,
advertising hearing aids. If
right.
you're out looking at anything, if it's going to be new cars, all of a sudden now you're getting advertisement for new cars.
Hmm.
Whatever it is, it's it being the internet, computer system, the software programs are tracking everything we do, and they're gearing and meshing what we see back to what it thinks we are looking for. So, much of what you see on your screen is already being controlled by a lower level form of AI. It's a marketing AI, but it's
Right,
there.
right. Well, Barney, have you heard? I mean, I've got different people, and they say they will be talking about something, like with their husband or wife, and then the next time they go use their iPhone, um, ads for what they were talking about pop up.
I,
They,
I
they've never, they've
haven't
never.
heard occasions of that myself, but I believe every word of it. I know that your iPhone can be listening to everything you say. Whether anybody's picking up and monitoring what's being said is a question, but they're certainly listening.
But I mean, so it's not. How can I say? It's not outside the realm of possibility that we're ready for the mark of the beast.
Uh, I think everything's in play that it could take place today if they wanted to do so. A number of years ago, I really investigated this, microchip that they
Right,
have.
right.
People are doing that. They're having it implanted already into their hands and into their foreheads. That was going on in Europe 6, 7 years ago. I was reading about it. So yeah, the technology and everything's there, and I really think that's probably what the mark of the beast will be. I believe it's probably going to be a microchip,
Yep.
whether it's the ones they're using today or whether it'll be an enhanced version. I don't know, but and the thing a lot of people are not aware of, I didn't think the microchip came around until the 80s or 90s. But when I was doing some investigating for writing one of my books a number of years ago, I discovered that the original microchip kind of came out, I believe, back in the 40s, and it has done nothing but evolve since then. And in I stumbled across a magazine, one of my, I call them my tech rags, a little magazine
Hmm.
documenting technology. And I got one of these in the mid 80s and I was reading it, and it was talking about a couple of different military bases that the United States had. And they put their PBX or commissary, if you will, on base where the public, not the public, but the military could go in and buy, things for their home, their family at. And that PBX was running on ID chips. They were experimenting with it on base way back then. And I don't think they went to involving it all the way, through all the military, but they were running some experiments. And that was in this tech rag from probably back about 1985 or 86. I was reading this. It's a long time ago.
So knowing everything and you know quite a bit, and then knowing everything you believe based on your research about it, how far do you think we are away from the mark of the beast, honestly?
I believe it could be implemented tomorrow technologically if the
Right,
world was ready for it. I
right,
don't believe it can happen yet because I think the rapture of the church has to take place,
right.
and then it won't happen until I believe the second half of the 7 years of Great Tribulation that we talk about. So I believe it happens very near the very beginning of that second half, that second 3.5 years. And now, whether it's actually at the exact beginning of it, I doubt that. It's probably 6 months to a year in because that's when the Antichrist really comes on the scene. He lifts himself up, but then it's going to take a little bit of time to create that image of the beast and start implementing this stuff. So from that standpoint, I can believe it could be 6 months to a year within this into the second half of the 7 years. And recognizing we haven't reached the beginning of that 7 years yet. And personally, I believe there's probably about a 1 year gap between the rapture of the church and the beginning of those 7 years. Most people think you have the tribute or you have the rapture of the church, and the next day or instantaneously, the 7 years of tribulation begin. And I don't personally believe that. Uh, but all that does is if I think the technology is all in place for it to happen today, and scripturally speaking, I think we are probably at a minimum about 4.5 to 5 years away from it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and that just gives the technology that much more time to perfect itself.
Well, it takes a couple of years to build these data centers, and they're going up all over the place at the almost at the speed of light. I mean, every time you turn around, look around, those are going up, and those take a couple of years. And then to kind of bring all the different countries up to speed, I would say would take get them all at the same point, same acceptance level. And I really do believe, based on what I'm seeing and reading, we in the U.S. have the farthest to go.
Really?
Europe, well, what I mean by that is it seems like when you look at Europe, they've really looked at a cashless model in their society for a long time, a lot longer than we have. And what I mean by that is um, discontinuing the use of currency, checks, um, that type of thing. I mean, that's been on their forefront for a long time. And then when the European countries kind of got together and they came up with the euro instead of all their individual currencies. That's another step in the direction. And then you get credit cards, debit cards, ATM, all that works towards a cashless society. And then you look at your iPhone or Samsung or whatever, and your Apple Pay or Google Pay. I mean, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't, you know what I'm saying? And so really, to me, it's just more the acceptance. So think about COVID and did everyone get a shot? Yes or no? Did some? So I would say that really, when I look at it, um, America probably has the farthest to go in acceptance of what's happening. It seems like other parts of the world are already kind of ahead of us in
Well,
that instance.
I definitely agree. I know from what research and studying I've done that Europe and the rest of the world is far more accepting of these ID chips than America has been. We got
Yes.
little niches of our society that has been very much into that. in doing that. But I think the U.S. is more niche based, little small pockets. Hasn't been a widespread acceptance. Where I think a lot of Europe, it has been widely accepted, and possibly in many other countries around the world as well.
I told you I was reading John Bevere's book, The King is Coming, the last book he wrote, and really good book. Highly recommend reading. But it's interesting because in there he talks about um, God's plan, his divine plan, in that um, God drew up his master plan for his kingdom before time began. There are numerous scripture passages confirming this truth, one being Isaiah 46, 9 through 10. And basically, this is an English Standard Version, but it says, I am God. There is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient time things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand and I will accomplish all my purpose.
Yep.
About end times. And really, as a Christ follower, someone that this has kind of been present most of my life, end times. I mean, if this, there's so many other things, it's not a wake up call for the church to really take heed. Yes, this is advancing, but God's divine plan is progressing as well. And at some point, he's going to give his son permission to go collect his bride.
Yep. It's on schedule. I don't believe we're very far away from that. We just don't know when yet.
Right,
But
right,
I know
right.
you and I are both watching for it almost on a daily basis.
Yes.
And yeah, this
But,
is just proving it's all coming.
right. But Barney, like you said, you're talking 4.5, 5 years from the rapture to the mark of the beast. So if the rapture happened today, boom, look at where we're at with the technology and the possibility to actually implement something that, quite honestly, 10 years ago, I would have thought was almost impossible.
Yeah. Well, I was even reading this article here. I would have thought was impossible. I was shocked. Probably, I just heard about it in this past week or so. And prior to that, I would almost said, "Nah, I can't do that." But they're creating these systems and making them so autonomous, and the systems are getting beyond what we think they are. Even, yeah.
Well,
Yes.
and 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 I believe just by talking to people around me, most of us are unaware that all this stuff is happening.
Exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say if I worked in technology as deeply involved as I was, and I've been out of it for a few years now, but like I said, I've worked for some of the largest Fortune 1000 companies in the country, and this just blew my mind to think that we've gone this far technologically. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a wake up call to everyone else. I think most people have no clue what could happen and how our world could change once the rapture of the church takes place.
Well,
It's
yeah, Barney, that video I sent you that kind of talked about the mark of the beast and really how it's progression and getting people to accept certain things and how in different, like South Korea or Southeast Asia, they've got different models going, Europe. But it's happening. We've adapted and adopted certain things, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. And we are really part of the test group for all of this as it's marching towards the mark of the beast.
Yep. I agree. It's happening. Like I said, I saw the video you sent. I didn't watch the complete thing, but watched a good portion of it. And it's amazing at how far they've come. And you're incredibly right. You're finding much more open acceptance to all this stuff once you leave the borders of the U.S.
Well, and I think about myself. I mean, I was a slow adopter of the iPhone. But then once I got it, I mean, I use it on a daily basis for something.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's, I remember being in a department store and there was some lady on a cell phone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why was that phone call so important? Couldn't she have waited? And this is before I had a cell phone.
Hmm.
Couldn't she have waited to take that phone call later?
Yeah.
I mean, I found it so just strange. And then I look at myself today and I'm just as bad as she, or probably worse than she was back in that time before I had a cell phone.
Yeah. I still use mine predominantly as a cell phone. I recognize you got the power and you got the capabilities there that it's far, far beyond that. And not to say I don't use it for GPS and for a number of other things. I guess actually I use it more, I think, because we control the thermostats and we have multiple thermostats in our home. And I've got, but I control the thermostats remotely. Of course, we uh, have more than one dwelling. So when I'm at the other location, I control
Right,
where I'm not at over the internet. And that's become
right,
just second nature. You don't even think about it.
right.
And then you've got, for security systems, you got your security systems where you have your homes being monitored. And at the same
Yeah,
time, I've got multiple cameras set up all over the house
yep,
that if
yep,
somebody comes up the driveway, I know someone's either pulling in a car or walking up the driveway,
right.
all the entrances. So yeah, and I use it, I think, very minimally compared to the average individual and how much they use their cell phone.
Right. We do, but just think of all the things you just rattled off that is there and that we've just
Like,
become accustomed to.
yeah, we take it for granted nowadays.
Right, right. And again, it's just pushing that acceptance model towards the mark of the beast. It's
Yeah,
just it's mind blowing and um, wild all at the same time. Unbelievable, unbelievable. But this article, yeah, I'm going to go out and look it up and do some other research because that is incredible that it went out on its own.
yeah,
And
you'll find plenty of articles out there. Hopefully, whoever's listening to us will go out and do the same thing. And
right,
then think about that. Our world is changing, and to think that John wrote about this in the Book of Revelation approximately 2,000 years ago, and we're seeing all these things come into place and come to be today. It
yes,
just proves the Scripture is real. The
yes,
rapture of the church is imminent,
yes.
and we all need to be ready for Christ's return and for our spending eternity somewhere.
And I really believe churches need to be emphasizing end times. They need to
I,
be. I know we've shied away from it for a number of years for many different reasons, but I really believe it's time for us to say, okay, look, we need to be helping people understand um, we're there. We're there.
I agree